So a few weeks ago, I decided to try something a little bit different from what I normally do here on my channel. I wanted to do a Q&A, and I basically opened up a Q&A on my YouTube channel to anyone who wanted to ask me a question. You basically could ask me anything. It could be about my personal life or about watches. So today we're gonna go through some of the questions that I received on that Q&A. So like I mentioned in the intro, there are questions that pertain to watches, of course, but there are also questions that pertain to my personal life. So I'm gonna try and answer them as best as I can. So here we go with the first question. So the first question, I'm gonna be looking at my screen a little bit, so definitely don't think I'm being rude. It is from my affordable watch collection. Good friend of the channel. I have actually spoken to him many times. A really great guy. Definitely check out his YouTube channel as well. He says in his question, if you had to keep only one watch out of your current collection, what would it be? And would you give it up for your ultimate Grail watch? That's a really good question. There is one watch that I probably would never give up. It is my father's watch. That's one watch that I think if I was down and out, I lost every penny to my name, I would try and hold on to that watch. My father passed away, so that's a watch that I would want to hold on to no matter what. So it's probably the most important watch in my collection. And the answer is no, I would never sell that watch for a Grail watch. Sentimental value outweighs a Grail watch any day of the week for me. Next question is another very interesting question. It is from Sut Daddy, and he asks, is there a brand that I think is on fire lately? And then essentially he's asking also, is there a brand that I think is not? So one that's sort of cold recently. So the brand that I think is absolutely on fire recently, there's two brands. I'm gonna choose Omega in this case because they've been doing some incredible things with their watches and a lot of people have been taking notice. I feel as though Omega are poised to really take on Rolex finally, and some of the quality, they just keep on increasing their quality. The other honorable mention that I would say there is Longines. So Longines is been amazing in a lot of the designs that they've come out with, and I'm really excited. Every time a new Longines comes out, I'm very excited to see what they are doing next. So ironically, all three of the brands that I'm mentioning are all in the same group, all within the Swatch group, but the brand that I think has been lacking lately or not doing as well, I would say is Blancpain. Blancpain has, for one reason or another, just not done it for me recently. They haven't really come out with any watches that are, in my opinion, cool. I really love the brand. I love the 50 Fathoms, and you guys know 50 Fathoms was my Grail watch for a very long time. I recently was able to buy a vintage version. However, I don't think any of the watches that they're currently making really do it for me, and I think a lot of people feel that way. I've spoken to other YouTubers and people in the industry, and I think that Blancpain is sort of lacking in that department. They haven't come out with really cool watches that people are sort of fighting over. Next question is from a friend of the channel, someone who's actually, I believe, won a giveaway here on my channel in the past. That is AZTazFan8497. And he is asking a personal question. He's saying, without disclosing your employer, because he already knows where I'm employed actually, what is it like living and working in that extremely busy and heavily populated city? Of course, he's talking about New York City. I actually work in New York City, in Brooklyn. So I'm obviously in New York City and Brooklyn very, very often. And he also asks, you spend a lot of time in traffic going to and from work, or are you close enough to walk? I'm guessing you've had a routine long enough to where you really don't give it any thought. Well, no, I give it a lot of thought actually, because I do live outside of New York City. I used to live inside of New York City, and my commute was much shorter. Now I have a very long commute. Sometimes it's up to an hour and a half, even though I live almost 15 miles outside of New York City. Sometimes it takes me an hour and a half to up to 2.5 hours, depending on traffic and things like that. So living in New York City and living around New York City is really tough, especially if you have to commute into New York City. So on a daily basis, it is really, really tough. There's a lot of sitting in the car, so I'm listening to lots of podcasts, listening to music. I do have a routine down, wake up, get coffee, get into the car, and sit in the car for an hour and a half. And then I get to work. I do my work, and then I turn around and drive back. So I do have a day job. This is not my day job. This is just really a hobby that obviously I love doing. So I hope that kind of answers your question. Living in New York City, wearing watches is a little bit dangerous. So I actually don't wear my nice watches on a regular basis. So that's kind of funny. So if you do see me out and about, I'm probably wearing a Bulova or a Seiko or maybe a Timex, because that's kind of what I wear on a daily basis. So Blue Knight 927 asked the question, what is my current Grail watch? My current Grail watch, and I think a lot of people would probably know this if you watch my videos, when I bring up Grail watches all the time, I bring up MB&F and I bring up the HM5. The HM5 is a watch that they no longer make. However, I am a huge fan of that watch, inspired by cards, inspired by the Amita Digitrend, and a few other watches, maybe the Casquette. Love that watch. Really, really cool. It's a collaboration between a few different designers. I think the designer on that watch was Eric Giraud. However, they did this watch with Ingenieur, so the movement's amazing. Everything about that watch I just think is cool. There's a prism that helps you tell time. I'll throw up a picture of it. I absolutely love that watch, and one day I hope to own it. Another personal question from Underachieving Watch Collect 1878. He asked a pretty funny question. Do you even own socks? The answer is no. I don't own any socks. I haven't worn socks for many, many years. It was about 10 years ago, I want to say, that I decided that I was not going to be wearing socks anymore, and I have not worn socks in many, many years. In fact, I've almost phased out shoelaces as well. This has been a personal choice. There's a few different reasons why. I'm kind of portly, so bending over in the morning to tie shoelaces sucks. It equally sucks to put on socks, so obviously that was the first thing to go. Shoelaces help me keep my shoes on my feet, so it's really hard to sort of phase those completely out, but a majority of my shoes don't even have shoelaces, and I own socks for when I have to like shovel snow or do things like that. Otherwise, I don't own socks at all. Zero socks. Anton Bay DA2571 asks, tell us a bit about your biggest watch mistakes or regrets. This I've actually spoken about here on my channel in the past. One of my biggest regrets was one of the first videos that I actually made on my channel was about a beautiful eDox that I owned. So someone actually asked about eDox in the questions. I'm going to get to that question in a part 2 of this Q&A. So I'll save some of the questions from this and use them in a part 2. However, there was an eDox that I had. That eDox was a minute repeater. It's a 5-minute repeater that had a module that's made by Dupuis. I don't know if I actually say that right. And I loved that watch. I had that watch for a while, but I ended up flipping it, and I really didn't make a lot of money on it. I think I made like $1,000 or $2,000 on it. Ended up using that money to obviously purchase another watch, but I should have never sold it because obviously it's really hard to get a minute repeater. I know it's an eDox. Some people don't really respect that name. Some people do, and I think they make some pretty amazing watches. They have a history as well. Obviously, you know, there's some holes in the history and stuff like that, but they make some pretty interesting watches. That was one of their more interesting watches, a little aggressive, a little bit ambitious for a brand like eDox, and it was a reliable minute repeater, something that you could play around with all the time. It was made by Etta, so you could just play around with it and it would be pretty reliable. And I sold it for bad reasons. I bought a watch that I ended up probably selling anyway, so I definitely regret that. Anyway, guys, that was a quick Q&A. There are a bunch more questions that I will get to eventually, and I'd like to do these on a more regular basis. If you have questions for me, please add them down in the comments below. I'll also throw up a Q&A card on my YouTube channel from time to time, and you could add questions there, and I will definitely try and get to all of them here on these videos. Please don't forget to like, subscribe, hit that bell icon if you found this entertaining in any way. Anyway, guys, I really appreciate you guys, and thank you for logging on.